In Matthew chapter 25, Jesus talks about separating the sheep and the goats, and he gives us this idea of how to live out the Christian life. And he winds it all up with, whatsoever you do to these least ones, whatsoever you do to these least brothers of mine, you do to me. One of the things that he talks about is visiting those in prison. I'm a big fan of prison ministry, always have been. I was involved for a very short time in some prison ministry, and it was one of the most life-changing things that I've ever done. All that being said, I understand that there are also people who have kind of a real difficult time with that. And I'll share a story with you in just a little while, about a very personal story about how this all kind of played out in my life. But we are called to minister to everyone. And when people are incarcerated and they spend time either in jail or in prison for whatever the offense may be, it can be very, very difficult when they are released and when it's time for them to come back out and become productive members of society and get back into life. And it can be a very difficult thing. Well, we want to introduce you to someone who is part of an organization today that helps out in that area in a big, big way. Dan Surface is the executive director of an organization called Dismas House, and he's here to tell us a little bit about their ministry today. Dan, good morning. Welcome to Seize the Day.
Good morning to you too, Gus. Thank you for this opportunity.
You're very welcome, Dan. It's great to have you on the program here this morning. You're doing really good work. First, start off, the name of the organization is Dismas House. Tell us why. Who is Dismas, and what does that have to do with anything?
Well, Dismas was the offender or criminal, if you will, that was on the cross with Jesus and asked him to take him into heaven with him. And that was the name given to the organization by Catholic priest at Vanderbilt University back in 1974, Jack Hickey. He was a prison minister and as well as a student life leader, and he and his students came up with the idea of creating Dismas House as a safe place for former offenders to come to, where they could create community. And many Vanderbilt students through the years actually stayed in the house with the ex-offenders. They created a family there. They learned to not only accept each other but love and support each other, and that's what we continue to do this many years later.
So Dismas House has been going on for quite some time now.
It has been.
Dan Surface, the executive director of Dismas House, and just to reiterate here too, Dismas House was founded then by a Catholic priest.
Okay, yeah, Jack Hickey.
Right.
Remarkable man.
Now tell me, Dan, a little bit about, first of all, about how you got involved with this particular ministry.
Well, I've been, I guess my professional life, I was in marketing, sales management, newspapers and magazines for years, and found myself more and more drawn. I was doing a lot of volunteer work with mentally challenged adults and children here in Nashville, and ended up chairing the board, and found myself more and more drawn to that than what I was doing in my work world. And my wife was supportive of me and saying, I really want to go into the nonprofit world and see how I can serve in a different way, because this is what's calling me. And so I ended up working for Special Olympics here in Tennessee, and then with public radio, and then I ran a nonprofit organization called Kids in the Block, which we're puppeteers that went out into the schools to teach prevention education to children through the gentle artistry of puppetry. And bounced around some other things, just doing some consulting with nonprofits, because I'm a huge believer in creating more socially, financially sustainable solutions to problems in our community. And this opportunity came up. A friend of mine was the CEO of Dismas, and he was leaving, and I heard about it and applied for the job. And quite frankly, when I first came in, I was thinking to myself, I don't know anything about men and women coming out of prison. I've never worked in a prison ministry, and I was feeling kind of foolish that I even would try and take the position. And yet, very shortly, I felt that it was exactly where I was supposed to be. I just opened myself up to the experience and tried to be present and authentic with the men I was working with, and it seems that we're connecting, and that for me, it's all about serving
Sure.
And this is the best way I can serve.
Dan Surface, the executive director of Dismas House, with us this morning. By the way, is there a website that people can go to get more information about Dismas House, Dan?
There are several, dismas.org. It's DISMAS. And if I may, I'd like to mention also another part of the story is that 3 years ago, 2 Vanderbilt students living in the house were inspired to start a business working with our organization that's called Triple Thread Apparel, because not only did we recognize we needed to provide a safe place for them to stay, but we also needed to provide them with potential for jobs and job training, because as you mentioned before, Gus, a lot of people don't want to hire them. The stigma of coming out of prison, people said, oh, yes, we want you to turn your life around, but don't ask us for any favors,
right,
and don't ask us for a job. And those 2 students, inspired by their experience getting to know our ex-offenders in the house, said, why can't we start a business that we could provide jobs and job training? So our organization did that, and I'm growing that business. At this time, it's all about providing jobs and job training and asking people to give us their business. As we say, we don't want to be we don't want a handout. We just want we want to do your T-shirts. We want your business. So there's another website called TripleThreadApparel.com. And any of your listeners that are interested in finding out if they have any T-shirt needs, we can design them and print them for them and send them anywhere in the country. And by doing that, you're providing income, jobs, and job training to the men that we serve, and that gives them that much more of an opportunity to successfully transition back into society and to be reconciled, become productive citizens, and achieve their potential.
Sure. Dan Surface is with us this morning. Dan, I'm sure you know, and really I'd kind of like to ask you on a personal note. You mentioned the word stigma and the stigma that is attached with ex-offenders, with people who've been incarcerated. When you were first considering this position, when you'd even first heard about it, did you have some of those stigmas in your own mind? And if so, or even if not, share with us what some of those are. Because I know that, I would venture to guess that maybe even the majority of people probably have attached these stigmas to ex-offenders. Like you said, the attitude for many is, well, yeah, we want you to become a productive member of society, but not on my watch, not on my dime, not in my backyard. So did you have any of these things that you had to struggle with, and what are some of these stigmas that are attached?
Well, that's a great question, and what I'd like to share a story with you that I think kind of sums it up and really proved to me that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. On the very first night that I came to dinner there to be introduced to the current residents, the ex-offenders that were living there, and they have a tradition where they go around and they ask each new staff member like myself or a new resident to say, just share some thoughts with you. How are you feeling right now? And I told them I felt humbled, and I felt excited, and I felt a little nervous. And they had the opportunity to ask me, each of them asked me a question, and most of the men would ask me questions like, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite sport? But the newest resident looked at me straight in the eyes and he said, do you have any biases towards us? And he's an African-American man, and all the other men in the room were African-American, and I'm a white man. And I looked right back at him without hesitation. I said, yes, and I think it goes both ways. And he smiled, and I knew I directly connected with him. And right there at that moment, I realized this is the only way to be. And yes, I do carry, as a white man, many biases and stereotypes and judgments, because I grew up in a society, and I don't think we can help but do that. And so it's that much more important, I think, for us to just speak from the inside out as much as possible and authentically who we are. And I think if we do that, we are coming from a divine place, and that's the best place to be.
Amen to that, brother. Wonderful words from Dan Surface. He's the executive director of Dismas House, and I'm Gus Lloyd. Thank you for tuning in. You're listening to Seize the Day on the Catholic Channel on Sirius XM 129. Now, in light of that, in light of the fact that most people probably do have this stigma attached when it comes to people who have been incarcerated, how do you, as being the executive director of Dismas House in your occupation, of course, but just when I say you, Dan, I mean the organization in general, and those of us who may also struggle with this kind of idea. How do we best deal with this? I know you mentioned about just being open and honest about it, but how do you overcome? How do you help, especially the ex-offenders, overcome some of these stigmas?
I think that what we try and do, and I think and that seems to work the best, is we are very much of an open house in that we invite church groups or student groups or individuals, families will come in, and we invite them to bring food, prepare that food, and break bread with our residents. That is such a powerful experience for everyone. And in talking to some of our residents, they see they can overcome their own shame and their own nervousness about whether they will be accepted or not. And then for the community that's coming into the house, whether they're college students or whether they're churches, synagogues, whatever organizations they might be, that are coming in and breaking bread and being of service is such a powerful experience in itself. And I think it brings everyone down to that personal, intimate level where everyone can feel safe and loved and connect. And I think, to me, one of the most powerful things we can do is to, if we can either join a community or create one, because I think one of the biggest needs in our society is that we all long for that community, and it's a community of brotherhood and sisterhood, of recognizing that we have so much more in common than we think, and that we're really all the same in the end.
Amen to that. Amen to that. That always reminds me. As I mentioned at the top of the show, I briefly did some prison ministry, and it's something that I wish I could do more. I'm sure I probably could if I decided to make time, but you know how things go. Anyway, all that being said, it reminds me of that story of Archbishop Sheen, who was saying Mass at a prison one day on Christmas Day, and at the beginning of his homily, he simply stood up and he looked around and he said to all the men that were in the prison at the time, he said, "The only difference between you and me is that you got caught." And I thought, and that was from Archbishop Fulton Sheen. I thought that was just a very profound thing. I want to take this to the other side of the aisle here, if you will, Dan, and have you talk about this. I'm sure that for the ex-offenders who are part of Dismas House, they just want to get back out. They want to put their past behind them, move on, become productive members of society. And we say that as though they were never a productive member of society to begin with. They did something wrong. They've paid their price, their dues. They've done their time. Now they're looking to start their life over again. I'm sure that it can be very frustrating for them too. So what kind of services and advice do you offer, especially words of encouragement and wisdom, do you offer to them in their trials?
That's a great question, and it is so difficult for them. I think one of the other things that we do is we provide all kinds of supportive services. We have a caseworker that comes in twice a week and works individually with them to provide them if they have mental health issues, if they have past addictions that they're still fighting, so alcoholism or other kinds of issues like that. We provide financial literacy services. We provide family counseling. We can provide all those kinds of services or connect them up with the services they need. But it is very frustrating for them, and I think that the personal relationship that our executive director at Dismas House, Scott Piper, has with them is very important. And then also the support they can give each other, because we have men that are in their 20s, we have men that are in their 50s and 60s, and particularly the ones in their 60s have so much wisdom. And in many cases, they spent many years in prison before they came out, and can be a great resource and support for the other men, particularly the younger men that come in and maybe still haven't really learned their lesson and still are trying to find a way to get around things, if you will. And so it is very frustrating. But I think the more we can create that supportive community, of the volunteers that come in the house, or the college students that live in the house with them and that they get to know as friends, and to say, we believe in you and we know that things have been tough, but we also teach them accountability and responsibility. And we teach them that from the moment that they come into the house, they're expected to start looking for a job. If we can't employ them at Triple Thread, our T-shirt company, we're looking to try and help them find employment anywhere else. And, so I don't know if I'm really answering your question. I think it's a very
I totally get it, and you certainly are, because one of the things that kind of comes to mind for me is that in one way or another, Dan, let's be honest here, we have all broken trust with someone. You know what I mean?
Sure.
None of us is without sin, and we've all broken trust with someone in some way, somehow, and we all need to kind of seek that forgiveness. In our case, it may be to an individual, whether it's a spouse or a family member or a coworker, whatever the case might be. In the case of offenders, those who've been incarcerated, it's kind of to the greater society. And we all, and I think that one of the things that we need to remember is that old adage that time heals all wounds. And this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. Is that something that some of the guys and female, I don't know if you do you also have female offenders?
At this time, we don't have them in the same house in Tennessee. We actually have a house also in South Bend, Indiana, where they have men and women in the same house on different floors and obviously common areas that they could share.
Yeah.
But right now in Tennessee, you can only have men in one facility and women have to be in a separate one, unfortunately.
Sure.
So,
and the only reason I brought that up is because it makes me think of this idea that, and maybe you could share a little bit about this. Mm-hmm. Do they oftentimes struggle with this concept of, well, I get out and I just want to begin life over again, and why can't we just do that? When there's this idea that it takes time. It takes time to kind of rebuild trust and our reputation. That's probably a great struggle, isn't it?
It is a great struggle, and some of the men are very impatient to get back into more of a normal life.
Sure.
And aren't necessarily recognizing that it is going to take time. That they may have to go out and take minimum wage for a while and just be grateful that someone's giving them a job. Know that as they perform, that they hopefully will be rewarded for that, or move on to another job, hopefully making more money. But I think the one thing I'd like to share, which what you were mentioning, brings up to me, is Father Hickey describes Dismas as a reconciliation ministry. And what I love about it is that it's not just about reconciling these ex-offenders to society. I think we all heal together because, like you said, I mean, none of us. I mean, we had some good breaks, but we were born into a family of a certain color in a certain place that can make such a huge difference. And I think that we all sense that there is that we have so much more that we are alike than we're different, and yet that difference that seems so important can change lives so much isn't really that important. So when we create community with these ex-offenders, I think we're recognizing that we've had so many blessings, and it's time for us to give those blessings back, and to and by creating that community, we all heal from that.
Amen to that. Well, Dan, I'll tell you, it's wonderful work that you're doing, and know that you're in our prayers because you really are following that gospel call in Matthew chapter 25. In helping, I know down here we often refer to them as the brothers in blue, in helping ex-offenders to get back into more of a normalcy and help assimilate back into the greater world. So God bless you in your ministry, and know that you'll be in our prayers for continued success.
Gus, thank you so much for this opportunity, and God bless you as well.
Thank you very much. And I want to give you those websites again. You can find out more at Dismas, dismas.org. And they also have that apparel company where they hire the ex-offenders to work and, provide for themselves and families. Triple Thread Apparel is the website that you can find out more about that if you, as a as Dan was telling us, if you have T-shirt needs, then you might want to consider using them as a company. TripleThreadApparel.com is the website for that. And for more information about Dismas House, you can go to dismas.org.